Welcome, boils and ghouls, back to October Nights. We got yet another episode for you today. Once again, I'm recording these in big old batches. Right now, I'm going to do a quick intro for Titane, because Gavin and I actually recorded a podcast about this already for a private screening that we did very briefly. So that already exists, and I see no reason why not to actually use it for good and have people, see something that we worked really hard on and that we're really proud of. So without further ado, I'm going to throw it back to Gavin and I from February of this year, I believe. And yeah, this is a fun little episode. I'm really proud of it, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Movie Club. I know this looks different. This is not really a camera angle you ever see of my room. Still the same room. Still the same, not quite real fireplace. But this is a much more simplistic kind of setup, because I'm not sitting behind the desk and doing my typical intro with lots of trivia. But in service of this film, I think this is one of the few movies that you might appreciate me actually trying to seriously kind of give you a couple guidelines to get through, because let's be honest, this film is kind of weird and crazy, and that's fine, but maybe it'd be helpful to kind of have an idea as to what you're getting yourself into, and maybe a particular interpretation to kind of help guide you as you watch it. So this week we're covering a fantastic film from last year, my favorite movie of last year, a film by the director known as Julia Ducournau, and that film is Titane. I'm not sure that's exactly the pronunciation of even the film title, because it's never said in the movie, and also I don't know French really well, so any pronunciation butcherings that happen in this episode are wholly because we're not good at French. And I say we because I am joined this week by my good friend and co-creator of Movie Club, Gavin Slay. So say hi, Gavin.
Hi.
So Gavin, can you explain to the audience why you're here this week?
Well, I'm here this week because I've seen this movie before, and we'll get into a little bit more specific, but it is a very weird movie, so it's hard for one person to completely get across exactly what we're getting into this week.
Absolutely. I think the best way to explain what's going to happen here is we're going to have a quick 5 to 10 minute discussion that is completely spoiler free, but maybe gives you a little bit of a viewpoint, a lens to take this film in through, because this is a film that doesn't really follow any clean genre guidelines and bounces all over the place. That's kind of prototypical for this director's work. If you've seen any of her other work, it's fantastic. I highly recommend it, including the 2017 film Raw, which is amazing. Gavin and I have also seen that. And a couple short films that are also really, really interesting. If you have the time, I highly recommend checking it out. But also because one thing I've started to know as I've watched more and more foreign film, both specifically for Movie Club and for my own film studies, is that foreign film doesn't fall into genre quite as easily, and they don't have as many of those big tentpole blockbusters. And so oftentimes I've been finding in more recent years that some of my favorite movies from especially the past decade have been foreign films, because they're so weird and out there and the opposite of the norm. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate Marvel or DC or any of that stuff, but it's nice to have something completely refreshing and that you have no clue how to process, at least initially, or even maybe it doesn't fit into any clean boxes, and maybe it's a completely different method of storytelling than you ever could have expected. I think maybe a good starting point, since we've seen kind of 3 works of hers, obviously 1 together and 2 separately, but start with her short film that we watched separately a little bit ago that I think is very, very interesting. And that would be the 2011 short film that went to Cannes and won the Petite de Rails, I believe is how you pronounce that. I could also be wrong there, but because everything, once again, is in French. But that is the film Junior.
It's on YouTube, and it's pretty short. So
yeah,
I'm sure you can share that in the bonus features section. But
yes,
it's probably the most normal of, if you're going to take these as 3 movies, even though one is a short, it's probably the most normal. Right. Even that has some, is introducing some of her, I guess, quirks as a director. Her style is very much still evident through this short.
Yeah, and at only 22 minutes, it's probably the best kind of litmus test of whether or not you're going to, vibe with her particular style of filmmaking, because it's a she works in body horror. That is something we were going to cover in the larger episode that obviously is scrapped for now. But body horror in particular is a genre that is designed to disgust and get under your skin, often utilizing, bodies in disgusting ways. And that particular subgenre of horror goes all the way back to what is considered the first example of the genre in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus. I mean, for obvious reasons, that is a body horror in that it is the titular creature. Sorry, I'll correct myself real quick. The creature that is Frankenstein's monster is a bunch of dead corpses of just people sewn back together and supplanted with a criminal's brain. And you can take that for what you will, whatever commentary is in there. But it's designed to be monstrous in a way, but also to force us to question our own humanity. And I think that's something that DeCorna is excellent at across her filmography thus far. And it's not that big. You can easily dive into it over a weekend if you have a long weekend, like I do this weekend currently. I highly recommend her stuff. It is French, it is weird, but it is very, very good.
And you mentioned body horror, and that's true of at least all three of the works that we've seen. Body horror is a big part of the movie, and she does a really good job of tying body horror and these really grotesque and graphic scenes in with the themes of the movie that she's doing. Like, maybe as good a job as any other director or writer that I have seen. Her movies just tie all of that together while still being somewhat disturbing to watch. You never feel like they're going too far or that it is outside of the themes of the movie.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess to get into specifics of like how these movies kind of fit into this genre, Junior is probably the best place to start because I don't feel like spoiling that for you is going to ruin any experience. But also just because it's such a short film that you really should take the time to watch it regardless. But as kind of a case study for what she does with her work is the body horror sure is kind of the thing that pops out because it's supposed to. That is exactly the function of this art. The function of any art that is in body horror is to, grab you with the gore, with the violence, with the disturbing elements. But there's always a commentary underneath it, a probing question that is designed to both make you uncomfortable and keep you thinking about the film and its particular themes long after you leave the cinema or long after you stop watching the short on YouTube. And this short is specifically set during this young girl's life at a time of immense change. I think it would not be a spoiler at all to suggest that it is kind of a movie about puberty and the evolution of someone moving from one stage of life to another. But it does it in such an interesting and grotesque way that also somehow becomes heartwarming, I guess is the best way to put it. Would you agree with that, Gavin?
Yeah. And again, I think this is an early template for what her movies are going to be like. There's this weird merging of something grotesque and also heartwarming.
Right.
Something that shouldn't feel heartwarming or good somehow manages to come through even with the body horror there.
Yes. Another thing that I think I would use to explain her work across the board is that if I were to explain the plots to you, you would probably reasonably, like a normal human being, assume that there's no possible way the story that I'm summarizing could work. And yet it does. Like, to tell you the plot of Raw, her first debut feature solo, you trying to process how someone could put that on the screen and it work and it makes sense and the major themes of the story get across and make you cry or make you squirm or make you even laugh, surprisingly enough. But when you sit down and you watch it, you realize you're like in the hands of someone who is at the height of their powers, who has the best command of the visual language that I've seen in this slate of modern directors. And it makes me really excited for whatever she does next. And so I guess it's probably a good time to shift over into her second feature, or the next film that we want to talk about, which is Raw. Gavin, I'll let you kind of front that discussion a little bit.
All right. To share my experience, I kind of watched these movies in reverse order. Watched Titane first, then Raw, then
Yes.
Junior. So Raw was the second movie that I watched. It is a movie. It's on Netflix. So again, readily available to watch. It is about, put simply, cannibalism. About specifically a young woman's discovery of her cannibalistic instincts as she is joining, starting her first year in college, in medical school. Is it medical school or college?
Yeah, I think the best way to sum up this movie in a way that might sound somewhat appealing to people is that it's about this first year vet school student who, upon a hazing ritual, discovers that she has an insatiable desire for human flesh. So it's kind of a zombie movie, but not really. But also, it's all about cannibalism and all kinds of other messed up stuff. And somehow, it's also a beautiful meditation on like family and sisterhood and the ties that bind. But I think most of all, one of the ways that I heard it explained to me before I watched it, that I think only rang more true as I watched through the film, is it's also a beautiful meditation on sexuality.
Yeah, and to add to that list from things that I saw, like I think there's a lot of like shared family trauma or shared family. There's a lot of shared family trauma there, and those themes as well.
One thing that you'll notice across the three things that we're discussing before we get into the actual film is that there's kind of a consistent player in the short film Raw from 2017, and that is an actress by the name of Garance Marillier. I think I'm pronouncing that correct. I could also be butchering it. Once again, French is not my native dialect. Also, I'm American, so pronunciations are insane here, and I'm sorry in advance. But she appears in all three of these films, sharing a name throughout all three, ironically enough, but I don't think you can make the argument that it is the same character. Who knows? Maybe it is sort of an in-joke for Julia Ducournau, but it's definitely fun to see the same actress pop up in all three of these. Raw's a fantastic movie. I think it's another great entry point to Ducournau's work and what she's doing. Obviously, if you don't like watching people eat things or eat people, probably not the thing for you. But hey, we've already covered Night of the Living Dead on this channel, so at this point, you should probably be all right with it. But with that, we'll move into the actual film we'll be covering tonight, which is Titane, my favorite movie from 2021. I guess this is my entry point into Ducournau's work. I'd heard of Raw before, a channel that I really like. What's So Great About That had covered it, but I had not watched the video. But it was like, yes, a movie about cannibalism. It looks great. I can't wait to see it. And it was like on Netflix, on and off for a couple years. And I kept wanting to watch it and kept not biting the bullet. But I saw that Ducournau's newest film, Titane, was going to be in theaters in September, and ironically enough, somehow actually have a couple screening dates here in Alabama. So I was like, you know what, that movie looks wild. I have to see that in theaters because I will kick myself if I don't. And sure enough, I left the theater being like, I don't think anything else is going to top this year, and nothing did. So for as weird as a movie as it is, it's one of those things that like I immediately went home and texted Gavin. I probably also screamed at Gavin a little bit about what the movie was about, but I probably didn't pitch it as good as I should have. But I remember coming away being kind of dumbfounded by kind of the sheer audacity of like how genre-less it is and how it switches between like different vibes every 15 to 20 minutes, and somehow it still all feels like a cohesive story. It's one of those things that, like I said, it shouldn't work, and yet by the end, I'm crying, I'm utterly disgusted, but also I can't look away. It's a beautiful film, and as Ducournau says, it's a movie about family. And very quickly, I think as you watch this, you're going to be like, I don't understand how that's the thing, but by the end, I think you will be swayed and understand that that is indeed the main crux and swing of this story. So Gavin, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, almost. Cat. I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but it really, Julia Ducournau really does a good job of balancing the hi.
All the cats are visiting.
All the cats are visiting. No.
This is all staying in the episode, Gavin.
Of course, but she does an incredible job of balancing the something that is gross or horrific and stuff that is actually somehow wholesome at the same time. And I feel like I have to say this over and over again because you're gonna get into this movie and you're gonna wonder what the heck we're watching. But it really it comes together in a way that I don't know if I've seen in a lot of other movies with this level of body horror and wild artistic decisions. And I think that's something special throughout all her works that she does.
Another lens that someone shared with me that I think was interesting is that this is a movie that is somehow also about kind of like gender identity, in that our main character, played by Agatha Roussel, is, in one of... It is literally a sin, a crime against nature that she was not nominated at the Oscars, because as good as all the rest of the performances that were nominated, I don't think I saw another performance where an actor went as hard as Roussel did and utterly convinced me of everything. One thing that Gavin and I both came away with is it was so refreshing to watch a movie where the film didn't make apologies for when the main character was making bad decisions. She was being villainous and mean-spirited. She was allowed to be that. She was allowed to be messy. But it also comes to this weird redemption story somehow, as this character finds themselves in the midst of this crazy situation they've caused for themselves, and by the end they are the truest version of themselves, and they've started to change because of love, because of found family. And it's just such an insane journey where you're just thinking about 15 minutes ago I just saw the most insane thing I've ever seen in a movie, and now I'm openly weeping in a theater, or openly weeping watching a Blu-ray copy of this film, and about this beautiful meditation on what it means to be loved by someone else and how that can transform us and change us. And I don't think it is as unwholesome as some things in this movie can be, that the main themes of this movie are just such a beautiful hug in the midst of a movie that is also showing you ridiculously disgusting things that can happen to bodies. That I don't know. It's such a weird experience. That there is no other equal in terms of just how off the wall it can be, but how beautiful it can be at the same time.
Yeah, I think that captures it. It's impressive. It's really... I don't really feel like I have the words to completely describe it. I think you almost just have to see it for yourself.
And I think that's as good a place as any to end this discussion, this pre-film discussion about Titane right now. So without further ado, we thank you for joining us here at Movie Club, and we are proud as all get out to present this insane film to you tonight. This is Julia Ducournau's second solo directorial feature, Titane. And hopefully, by the end, you'll understand why I wanted to share this film with you so much, because I don't think you're ever going to see anything else like it. So, see you after the screening.
Can I talk about this movie that I saw?
Can I talk about this movie, man? I just been dying to talk about this movie. Just me pulling a full Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with my giant Pepe Sylvia map. Just word vomiting at poor Gavin and Kent, being I have to
say something.
I have to talk about this movie or I'm going to go insane. Now we can get into spoilers.
For your benefit, my cat's been over. I may have been able to hear it, but been playing over with her toy up there, so that might be getting the background of some of the later.
That's fine.
It's also my refrigerator kicked in at about the 20-minute mark, so I don't know if that'll change all the room noise stuff that you have to. take.
Well, it's not coming through on Zoom, so
Cool.
maybe it's not hitting your other microphone as well.
You know.
Who knows? It's hard to tell.
Oh no! They just moved it. Get
It's fine.
down. Let me make sure I'm still set up okay.
Oh, hold on. This is a good one. This is obviously a user-written one. Ever since that horrible car crash that nearly claimed her life, Alexia has been living with a high-purity, medical-grade titanium alloy implant firmly fixed to her skull. But, almost 10 years later, instead of being put off by cars after her extensive cranioplasty, Alexia, now a silently violent go-go dancer at underground automotive shows, has developed a fetishistic fascination for cars. In the meantime, as a spate of grisly homicides terrorizes the city, the distraught father, Fire Chief Vincent, unexpectedly reunites with his long-lost son, Adrian, who has been missing for a decade. However, time changes people. Who is the bruised, taciturn stranger who demands a place in tender Vincent's heart? I think that's such a beautiful way to kind of sum up the movie, because it doesn't connect any of the threads. It's like there's just like this insane kind of story that is happening in two sectors, and it doesn't connect the dots for you.
Then you get to experience that yourself. Because Vincent's story is such a huge part of the movie. It feels weird to be like, not mention it at all, but you don't want to spoil it. And that does a good job of giving that story its own place in the summary, in the synopsis, without spoiling exactly how it plays out.
Right, without cluing you into the fact that those stories are inextricably tied together, other than in just like this meditation on family and love. Because, some movies have like this kind of wide-ranging ensemble cast of characters, and they don't ever really tie together, but that's not what the movie's about. It's not about connecting these storylines. Instead, it's about just like vibing with this story that is affecting all these different people. But instead, it is very interconnected and could not be more important that those characters meet. I guess the best place to start in kind of a spoilery discussion is maybe some of the places our previous conversations about this film have gone, which is kind of how it's a beautiful meditation on like gender identity and specifically what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man. And I think in terms of especially recent depictions of masculinity, the character played by Vincent Lindon here, the police chief father, is maybe one of the best. Sure, he has his problems and he's not always perfect, but I do think that like in terms of the way that Vincent goes about depicting this character is so beautiful and refreshing to see a masculine role model in this sense.
Yeah, I think that's good. He's vulnerable in a way that you don't see a lot of like high masculine characters be, especially in American movies. That's changing, obviously, but like you said, he struggles with obviously drugs of some variety, some sort of steroid.
Yeah, he takes steroids, which is another beautiful like kind of subversion of the trope. Is like we openly get to see this man who is so committed to kind of the front that he's built up that he's willing to like hurt his body to stay in this kind of peak performance shape that people assume is masculine, because that's what media and the world at large tells us. If you're not like ripped, if you don't have a six-pack, you don't have the peak male body, and because of that you lose access to some of the things that masculinity brings you. And so to realize that even for him it's sort of a lie is such a beautiful thing to kind of express in a film that kind of questions what it means to be anything, specifically in regards to gender.
Yeah, it would be really easy for this character to be that front that he puts out there, and that's just it. There's nothing but beneath that, but it comes through so clearly in what we see in the movie that it's just a beautiful character and a beautiful story.
On the other side of that equation is the character played by Agatha Roussel, who kind of bounces back and forth between two different people, and that is pretending to be the firefighter chief's son, Adrian, and her actual character, Alexia. And by the end of the movie, it's hard to kind of distinguish those two things from one another, in that she is fulfilling this son role and almost feels more at home in that reality than she ever did with her previous family as Alexia. And I think that's just such an interesting story to see, because it takes us a while to get there. This is like the second half of the movie before we get there. And when we first meet Alexia, obviously, there's a car crash, breaks her skull open, and there's a medical procedure that puts a titanium plate in her head. And then we zip forward a couple years in her life. She's a bit older now. And she's also a serial killer, just to not put too fine a point on it. She murders people. Whether or not these people deserve it or not is up to you to decide. I'm definitely not going to be the one to kind of moralize about that. But I guess to not pull any punches, let's just jump into the weirdest scene in the entire movie, the thing that people talk about, and I talked about the second I came home from the movie, is in what I initially assumed was going to turn out to be a dream sequence, and instead turned out to be the most important scene of the entire film. Alexia has sex with a car. Is maybe the most delicate way I can put it, and that's not very delicate at all. And you might be, I mean, you've seen the movie now if you're watching this part. Yeah, it's in the movie. I don't know how to explain it to you other than it's just part of the film. It's kind of like the space baby at the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's like, your guess is as good as mine, friendo. It's just the entire movie was effectively developed around this scene. That was the idea. Like, what happens if someone were to be impregnated by a car? I don't pretend to know how Dacorna's mind works, but I'm glad it does. Yeah. And I don't understand how she's able to put together these stories that have so much meaning baked in and feel like they're addressing so many different things all at once. But yeah, a movie where a woman has sex with a car ended up being my favorite film of the year. I have it on Blu-ray. I have this giant poster here, so just to prove to you that I care about it. And I've been waiting for the score on vinyl since I ordered it in November, and it still hasn't showed up. It's supposed to come here at some point this month. But man, it's such a weird scene, but 20 minutes later, you're just kind of on to the next thing, and you're just moving along with the story. And occasionally the movie reminds you, no, that really did happen. You don't need to forget that. It is important to the story. But also, there's so many other things going on in the movie. In particular, when now on the run from the law, as they're closing in on the fact that she's probably the serial killer, she decides to injure herself and pretend to be this missing boy who's been missing for over a decade. And that's when she ends up connecting with the firefighter played by Vincent Linden, who ironically has the name Vincent. She, as Adrian, moves into, and I even feel weird using pronouns in this particular sense, moves in as Adrian to what's it even called? The firehouse. Thank you, Gavin. I completely lost that word out of my dictionary. Moves into the firehouse and pretends to be the son. Over the course of these two people and their kind of portrayals of things that aren't really real, Vincent's portrayal of being the peak version of masculinity and realizing that through relationship that's not real, including Alexia as Adrian helping him inject the steroids into his body. So they end up sharing these really intimate parts of their lives, and by the end, Vincent doesn't care if it's not actually his son. He still loves this person irregardless of who they are. And I don't know about you, but that made me cry in the theaters watching it. Oh, yeah. Because it's sure, it's a movie where someone has sex with a car and is impregnated by said car, but this beautiful story about found family and how it changes these two people for the better is absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, the quote I wrote down when I was watching it that also made me cry was, "You're my son, whoever you are." And obviously that's a translation from the French. But right. Just that acknowledgement of, at that point, that their relationship, while based on a lie, was still real enough to be so meaningful to Vincent that he wasn't going to abandon this person, even as it was becoming increasingly clear that they were not his actual son. Yeah, and that it's a gut punch.
Excuse me as I very rudely try and find our initial chats about this movie.
Yeah.
I was trying to do that while you were talking and ran out of time.
Yeah, I had pulled my notes up earlier.
I sadly did not.
But yeah, that relationship and that part of the movie starts off as, after seeing all the scenes that come before it with the serial killing spree and then her starting the fire and leaving her life, you think that this is going to be another really quick episode, just a way to get in a temporarily safe place away from the cops. And it just blooms into this deeply moving, the rest of the movie, instead of just being this short episode, is the entire rest of the movie. And it's just
right.
So good.
I mean, even Vincent gives what he assumes to be his son at the time, the option to leave, to just walk out and leave. And I don't know, just something about, he needed to know that this person that he cared about was all right, but still wanted them to have the freedom to be their own person, and could tell that they were afraid. And so watching Alexia slowly envelop herself in that role and in a way sort of become that son, it's moving, because sure, it is, like you said, based on a lie, but at a certain point it's real. It doesn't matter what the pretense was initially. Both of them are aware of the fallacy of everything here, and both of them don't care. They both stick around, they both choose to be there.
Right. And I think that something this movie does really well is just showing, both characters get a moment to choose that, to be very clear. Like you say, Adrian or Alexia decides to stay instead of leaving when they're given the opportunity. And then the father later on affirms that his relationship with them is important, and a father-son relationship. And even other characters, like the mother, who shows up and kind of very quickly finds out this is definitely not the person that she gave birth to, still also recognizes that and sees in them that even though it is very messed up on a lot of levels, it's still something that both people need. And yeah, that's just a really great way to tell a story and build character relationships.
Right. I mean, the ex-wife of this fire chief says to Alexia / Adrian, as they are credited in the film's credits, I don't care who you are, you just don't hurt him. I mean, in terms of like repeated gut punches in the third act, just oh my god.
Well, and again, like when that reveal happens, when the ex-wife finds out, you're thinking, oh, this is a new spot in the story. Alexia has to leave and run and move on, and instead, just like flipping it entirely on its head and saying, no, this is not a relationship ending secret. This is just a complication, a difficulty that family members have to get past, instead of something that completely ruins that relationship.
Just for your clarity, I'll put on screen, obviously, a censored version of what Gavin sent me that kicked me off, that effectively informed me that he was indeed watching a movie I'd been recommending to him for months at this point.
It didn't include the title of the movie.
No, it did not. It did not matter because there's not any other movie that I'm familiar with that has this in it. So, to which I responded, I was at work when I received this. Oh my god, I cannot explain how excited I am for you. But at the end, Gavin sums it up with, I think, the most cohesive and cogent possible way of explaining this movie. And it is, I can't tell if this was supremely messed up or wholesome. I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, that was more or less my feelings coming away from it. And I think that is what I felt coming away from this movie. And is what I felt coming away from her other works that I've seen in general. She is just an ability to show things on screen without it feeling excessive, without it feeling exploitative, and she's able to tie it to the scenes, to the themes of the movie, and in really beautiful ways. It's cool. It's cool what movies can do.
Yes, this is. I mean, movies, man. As Vin Diesel once said,
the movies.
If you don't have anything else to add, I think this is a perfect place to wrap up our, kind of guided post-screening discussion.
Yeah.
So thank you once again for joining me. I know we've talked about this movie at length multiple times, and each time has been enlightening to me and helping me to find new reasons to love this movie, and continuing to confirm my undying support for it. So thank you again for joining me, Gavin.
You're welcome. Glad to talk about this weird movie.
And thank you for watching. If you decide to stick around and enjoy this post-screening discussion, I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed this movie. I know it was incredibly weird, but I hope it made you laugh. I hope it made you cry. I hope it disgusted you at times. If it didn't, I think you need to seek help. But thank you for watching, regardless. And I hope to see you again next week when we have one more fantastic screening in this For Loves in February series. So thank you once again for joining us here at Movie Club. I've been your host, Curator, here around these parts, Patrick Smith. And this has been a lot of fun. And Gavin, if you want to join me, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Well, that just about does it for us here at October Nights. As always, I've been your host, your ghost host, Patrick Smith, and this has been October Nights. Oh, and one more thing. Sweet dreams.